Welcome back to Targeted. We have in Mesa an absolute legend, somebody who I've been trying to get on for about 2 years. I've been trying to get on the show for about 2 years. Everyone's like, you got to get Jay Pages. You got to get Jay Pages. And I have Jay Pages here today. Jay Pages, if you don't know, is a 4th degree black belt. He's a family man. He's an undefeated martial artist, lifelong learner, coach, accelerator of the sport. He has an entrepreneurial field that breeds gyms around here. We see Jay Pages everywhere. If you're in the Phoenix area, you definitely have seen him. He studied under a 12-time world champion. I can't continue this list without saying, hey, Jay, how are you today?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me here. It's great to be here.
Yeah. Well, of all the things that I could list out here, how do you introduce yourself whenever someone says hi?
Honestly, I'm just Jay. Honestly, it's I don't really put out like I'm this and that and whatever. Honestly, I'm just Jay Pages. I'm just like you said, a family man, a coach, a business owner. Try to keep it as humble as possible.
You're definitely on spot with this, because every time I see you interact with somebody on camera, off camera, in the comment sections, you're a true champion. That's what true champions always do. I'm just the guy, just doing my thing.
Yep.
And this is what God made me to do, I guess. And yeah, I'm here.
I'm trying. I try. This is too much pride and ego in the world right now, and won't help adding to it.
Amen. All right. So I got to start off with the martial arts game. Like, how did you get into it? How did it all start? What made you?
So I was horrible at ball sports. As many sports as I've tried, from basketball to football, basketball, baseball. Just me and ball sports just did not mesh. My hand-eye coordination just sucked. But I had an affinity for martial arts, and I think it was more my dad that got me into it first, because I started out doing Filipino martial arts when I was young, and that's what my family was into. And it just went from there, just my interest, just from watching all the old kung fu movies with my dad and continuing to do martial arts, and then seeing the UFC in the early 90s. I was like, that's like the next evolution of martial arts, and I want to do that. And what was crazy, I don't know why I even did it, because I was like 17, I was still competing heavily, and I saw this ad in the back of a magazine, a martial arts magazine, judo versus karate versus boxing versus whatever, all these different arts. Apply now. I applied, got the paperwork. I'm like looking at this thick stack of paper. I'm like going through, I'm like, this is a lot. This is more than just what I've ever done to compete.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'll just, sit it down for a sec. And then next thing I know I see the UFC. I'm like, oh crap, that's what I was going to sign up for.
That's nuts.
But, I was like, yeah, maybe I'm not. That's just wild. But then when I saw it, I'm like, that's wild, but it's cool at the same time. I need to get into that.
Yeah. So when you saw it for the first time, you're like, that's definitely what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
But you didn't, you were reluctant. It seems like when you had the application, you're like, there's a lot here.
Yeah. So because it was something novel, and it was something I didn't know what to expect, because I've never been in a competition that mixed all these things up, and there wasn't very much detail until I got that stack of paperwork.
There was no rules.
No. And then when it said that, I was like, oh, maybe this might not be for me right now at this point in time. I'm like, then I see the show, I'm like, that was definitely not for me at this point in my life.
Well, okay, but then you jumped into the MMA game.
Yep.
And what was the feeling then? I mean, was it real whenever they locked you in a cage somewhere?
It was very nerve-wracking.
Where were you?
So
it was your first fight.
So I was here in Arizona. And what was funny was, like, when I took the fight, my coach at the time asked me, like, I just got back to the gym from having the flu for like a week, 2 weeks. And
yeah, you weren't feeling it. Who was your coach?
At the time, Tom Proctor.
Okay.
Yeah. Like, some people might know who he is, because he's also an actor.
Well, Jackson, put some Tom Proctor on. We got.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
will show. We'll show it
Full
gambit.
One of his biggest roles recently was Guardians of the Galaxy.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, he's on the phone. He's like, puts it down. Hey, Jay, want to fight? I'm like, sure. And then I think it was maybe a month or so later, I'm in the cage.
Wow.
Yeah.
Month.
It was nerve-wracking because, again, I didn't know what to expect. I've done full contact martial arts in the past. I've been in street fights, so I know what it's like to get punched in the face. But the atmosphere and the environment completely changed my perception of the whole thing and the whole event and how I'm feeling with it. And honestly, in the middle of the fight, I honestly thought I was losing. And the second round, I go to my corner. I'm like, I'm just getting beat up. I'm tired.
Yeah.
He's kicking my butt, and he's like, Jay, he hasn't touched you yet. I'm like, oh, yeah, he hasn't. I'm like, so yeah. So, and it was funny. It was I was actually the first fight of that first
You were
event
the
ever
first one on the
held.
card?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Knocked him out in the third round, and I was hooked.
But you were winded.
Yeah.
After the first, see, people don't see that side of the sport. Like ball sports, like you said, there's a conditioning, but not like the sport that we're in right now.
And especially it's the sophistication of how mixed martial arts is today. There's a rhyme and reason for why we do things and how we do things. Back then, we're all going into it blind. We think we just wrestle a bit, we do some striking a bit, and that was it.
Yeah. Okay. So being an OG MMA expert, black belt, proven. I'll just say it that way. What sport would you start with if you were brand new to MMA?
Honestly, wrestling.
Wrestling.
You can't go wrong with wrestling. I wish I was better at wrestling when I was younger. My wrestling didn't come till, so it was in the middle of my MMA career. But generally speaking, back then, now, wrestling is the strongest base right now for MMA.
Yeah, you know who else said that was Ezra Elliott, huge wrestler, undefeated. He's going to be in the UFC someday. I mean, but yeah, his background in wrestling brought him to MMA, and he was like, I just worked off of that, and now he just submits everyone. I mean, he's last time he had a knockout, but okay, wrestling. What's next? Wrestling, then what?
Wrestling, and then I would get into boxing.
Yeah.
Because it's you don't see much these days a lot of kicking anymore.
Yeah.
So and it just there's a lot of high risk for throwing kicks, but you get your hands good, you get your wrestling good, throw some submissions in there, you got a really solid background.
How long? So I know one of my friends went to the UFC in a year. I was like, wow.
Yeah.
That's not heard of. Yeah. So how long would you say someone who's really serious about the sport, how long should they put in before they think about maybe asking coach for a fight?
I would say about that year.
Yeah.
Just to get it to an amateur level.
Yeah.
The way I came up, and it's the way I still structure with my guys, is, getting competition experience in different arenas, so you don't go in cold with a bunch of eyes on you.
Yeah.
Doing a kickboxing competition or doing a jiu-jitsu competition, so you get sort of a feel of, again, the pressure, the adrenaline, the eyes on you, the crowd, the cheering, the sound, all that affects how you're going to perform, and how you could control that, your emotions when you're in the middle of it all, makes a big difference too.
So how do you control it? How do you teach people to control that?
So basically, I just make them do a bunch of competitions.
Yeah.
And there's no really set program as to how you deal with the stresses and the pressure of competition. except for actually just doing the competition itself. You know, because the one thing I think that I really push with my guys, you could be as physically and technically prepared for something, but if your head is not in a game, it doesn't matter how well those two other things are, your head will affect everything else. And especially when it comes to fear.
Yeah.
That's one thing I think, that whether it's a fear of losing, fear of getting hurt, people, when you compete in any kind of a big event, the more reps you put in that type of environment, you learn to navigate, you learn to deal and cope with those emotions. They don't go away.
Yeah.
They're still going to be there, but the difference between the people that are at a high level competing and doing well versus people that have never done it is just they've put more reps, more time in that competition scene, and they know how to navigate and cope and deal with those emotions and fear or whatever it is.
Yeah, Caesar says the experience is the best teacher.
Yep.
And it's still alive today, baby.
Yeah.
I mean, that's such a good thing. So put in the reps, get the experience, know yourself.
Yep.
That's fantastic advice, man. That's okay. So I'm going to go to one of the questions I got from the community when I told them you were coming on. You've trained fighters, law enforcement, competitors, and everyday people for decades now.
Yep.
If you had just 30 seconds to teach someone how to survive a violent encounter, what would you tell them?
Just run.
Run?
Honestly, just run. It's not worth it. Honestly, like if for whatever reason, if you have an opportunity to just walk away, I don't care how skilled, what you know, what you don't know, just walking away from it will always be the best option, you know, as far as dealing with a violent encounter. Now, if you have no other choice, you know, you kind of have to start kind of scoping out the land and seeing where your exits are. Yeah. You know, and everyone's going to, you know, you have all these self-defense, combative type things. It's like punch here, strike there, do this, do that.
Yeah, it doesn't work like that.
No. And honestly, it's like the one thing I've always kind of pushed, if you're in a situation where you have to fight, don't do any of that stuff. It's just going to aggravate the other person, and their adrenaline's going to kick through the roof. And no matter how much you try to punch and kick, their body's going to be able to take a significant amount of damage and still be effective. And what MMA has shown us is that the human body could take a lot of damage and still be combat effective. Yeah. However, if you're able to choke them and put them to sleep, you know, that they're incapacitated, they can't use anything. So it's like, that's the one thing I will always say is like, if there's anything you're going to use or do,
look for the neck.
Look for the neck. Choke them out, put them to sleep, you know. Doesn't do any permanent damage. You know, you don't hurt the individual. You know, you subdue them. Can't do anything with it. So
I think that, and now when everything's being recorded, that's so important.
Exactly.
You know, I was defending myself, choke. You know, I was defending myself, strangle. But around the neck is you can explain that. Now, when I was teaching combatives, we were teaching people really quick how to get to the head. You know, a blunt trauma to the head will kill somebody. That's the number one cause of death. So that's what we'd focus on. And then after a while, we were like, we can't focus on this anymore because people are getting in bar fights and looking for the head. And so they had to disband the combatives program that I used to teach. They don't teach it anymore.
You got lawsuits and everything.
So like the neck was like, that's what I've really learned out of your specific program. I've learned a lot more of how to get around the neck than I ever thought was possible. So thank you.
And it's been proven time and time again, not just in MMA competition, jiu-jitsu, grappling. It's the number one most hit submission across all grappling sports or anything that involves grappling. You know, is getting to the back, getting behind them, and strangling. Because again, like even that it's the kind of the path that I take with my athletes is like we're always looking for the back. Whether we're standing on the ground, we're always looking to get behind our partner just because you're not facing their weapons.
Right.
So you're a lot safer. You have more options than they do and easier to control.
I love it. All right. So take us through
Yep.
the transition from athlete to coach.
Yep.
Because that's a continuous learner type of track. But it's a track that a lot of people take. And there's a transition period there where the mindset has to shift. Can you tell me about your personal journey?
So back when I was fighting, there wasn't money in it. You know, it wasn't as organized. It wasn't as sophisticated as it is today. And it was impossible back then to really make any kind of living off of it.
Yeah.
You know, short of becoming a coach. So that's kind of like the route that most people that started in my era have kind of taken, unless they were able to make it to the UFC back then. That was a hard route to take to get to the UFC. There were certain events that you'd have to fight in to get recognized by the UFC. So
like around here or
just
like,
in general around the world.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like there's shows in Japan, shows in Hawaii, and here in the States.
I heard some of it was like absolutely rigged too. And they're like,
Oh yeah.
we're going to get a sumo wrestler.
Yeah.
Well, where are you going to get that? Or in an MMA ring? You're not.
Exactly.
But
yeah, honestly, I got to a point where it's just like, I got tired of getting punched in the face.
okay.
You know, just because like I said, there was no like rhyme or reason as to why we did what we did when we were training. The more we beat each other up, that was a good training session. You know, again, there's like no rhyme or reason as to what we did. And it took its toll on my body. You know, like I feel like I got beat up more in training than I ever did in any of my fights.
Wow.
You know, and like I'm sure I got CTE, you know, from all the concussions.
Yeah, at a certain time.
Exactly.
If you're in the game, you've got it.
Yeah. So then you know, like the next progression was just like I started coaching kids, and then some adult classes, and then I just fell in love with that role, and that's where it went from. You know, just instead of living through my own accomplishments, I was living vicariously through my students and my athletes and their accomplishments. Yeah. There's a different type of pride and joy that you get from seeing somebody else succeed that you've helped grow and develop.
Yeah.
So that's where like all of it got driven to.
It's weird to unlock that experience is what I'll call it. Whenever you know somebody's got greatness inside of them, and then because you push them to that great level, and they get to display it, or they get to raise their hand, or their hands rose, or that something happens and you see it, and it's parental, but coaching hits different.
Yeah.
So okay, when's the first time that happened for you?
Oh gosh, when I first started training fighters.
Yeah.
You know, and I had one of my guys had his first MMA fight, and it was I don't know why at the time, I don't know why I said yes to it, but it was against a guy that was a black belt.
Okay.
But
in jiu-jitsu?
Yeah, in jiu-jitsu. Okay. So I was like, you know what? It's a fight. Let's just take it.
Yeah.
You know, the guy had way more experience, but my athlete at the time, he was able to submit him and finish him in the first round.
Nice.
And that sense of pride, you know, it's like, it's very parental.
Yeah.
But it was like, that was like work that he put in, and that's work that I put into him, you know? So that was like my living vicariously through it, that pride of being raised, having his hand raised.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. So when's the last time that you experienced that? Because you just had some massive wins, like really massive wins.
Yeah, they're honestly, regardless of how big the wins are or how small they are or what event, I always have this overwhelming pride in my athletes. But I will say, like, one of my one of my athletes, JJ Bowers. He's probably one of our more competitive and active athletes. He won the at the time he won the under 17 ADCC championships, and like that's like the tournament to win.
Yeah.
You know, it's like the Super Bowl of grappling.
Yeah.
You know, and he got on, then that opened up other opportunities for different events. And like he's like another time he submitted as a new brown belt, submitted a very highly competitive, highly experienced black belt in a very big competition and put him to sleep.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was like stuff like that. That's like the pride that I take, whether they win a belt or not.
Yeah.
But when they're able to go past what the expected outcomes or expectations and kind of proves everyone wrong,
Right.
kind of thing. That's what, like, those are the big wins that I see and look for, and I take most pride in.
Stay with us as we stay on target with another awesome episode coming up next. We'll see you there. And subscribe to Targeted Now. As an ambassador to buckedup.com, I get to give you our special discount. That's Atlas 25 when you go to buckedup.com to get that special discount. Only for our listeners, Atlas 25. Go to buckedup.com now. Entrepreneurs, you're wasting money. Are you paying for TV, radio, maybe even newspapers? I gotta tell you, that's all dead. What's new? Well, I'm glad you asked, Atlas. It's podcasting. Just so happens I have a very successful podcast that I can put you on. And we're looking for guests. So if you have a product or service that will help people, hit us up. Atlas Aultman Targeted Podcast. We bring new audiences to new people, and we bring new people to, well, you check us out.